The June sun hammered down on Riverside Community Pool like it was trying to flatten everything beneath it. Marcus Webb stood at the shallow end in his faded blue swim trunks, his weathered body still built from decades of construction work, shoulders broad, chest thick, but also marked by time. Liver spots, surgical scars, the loose skin of a 72-year-old man who had earned every year honestly. He'd been coming to this pool for 3 months now. Doctor's orders, arthritis in his knees, low-impact exercise. The pool had become his therapy, his sanctuary, his small rebellion against the inevitability of decay. The water felt perfect at 8:15 a.m. That was the sweet spot. Early enough that the serious lap swimmers had mostly cleared out, late enough that the morning was truly started. The chaos of afternoon hadn't begun. Those few kids here now, still in swimming lessons, didn't pay him any attention. He was just another fixture, another body moving through the water. He completed his 4th lap of the day, swimming a slow, measured crawl stroke that his physical therapist had approved. His breathing was controlled, his movements deliberate. He didn't have the speed of the athletes who used to dominate these lanes, but he had something better. Persistence, the kind of stubbornness that came from surviving 63 years of marriage, raising 3 children, burying 2 of them, and then burying his wife 5 years ago. He was doing his 5th lap when Karen Hutchins arrived. Marcus didn't know her name yet. That would come later, delivered with the kind of venom that made you remember it forever. But he recognized the type instantly. A woman in her late 50s. Wearing designer resort wear despite never leaving the neighborhood, Bluetooth earpods in both ears, the kind of posture that suggested she'd made a career out of disapproval. She posted by the manager's office, speaking urgently to Tom, the pool's assistant director, a tired kid, no more than 25, desperately not making eye contact. Marcus continued his lap, turning at the wall, pushing back out into the water. Freestyle. Focus on the breathing. In through the mouth, out through the nose. Dr. Chen had been specific. The water was medicine. He finished his 6th lap and was about to do a 7th when Karen approached the pool edge directly beside him. "Excuse me," she said. It wasn't a greeting. It was an interruption, the kind of word that demanded attention whether you wanted to give it or not. "Excuse me?" Marcus touched the wall and looked up. Karen was staring down at him with the kind of expression usually reserved for things found at the bottom of a trash can. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked. He tried to keep his voice neutral, but 60 years of life had given him the ability to read people instantly. This woman had already decided whatever she was about to say, and his response wouldn't change anything. "Are you a member here?" she demanded. "I am," Marcus said. "Been coming for 3 months. Physical therapy." "Well, I'm the current vice president of the HOA Community Standards Committee, and I have to say I'm concerned about the liability issues with." She gestured vaguely at his body, at his age, at his existence. "People of a certain demographic using the lap lanes. This is a family pool. Children's swimming lessons use these lanes." Marcus stared at her. He could feel the other parents on the bleachers staring now, too. The children's lesson instructor, a young woman named Sophie, had stopped moving. The water was perfectly still around his shoulders. "The lap lanes are open to all members," Marcus said quietly. "Those are the rules. I checked the handbook." "Yes. Well, rules are made by people who understand community safety," Karen said. "And I don't think anyone understands it better than—" "You're not responsible for pool safety," Tom interjected. He'd appeared beside her, his voice small but firm. "The manager is, and the rules are clear. Any member can use the lap lanes during open hours." Karen's face reddened. Marcus could see it happening in real time, like watching a storm cloud darken. She wasn't used to contradiction, probably hadn't heard it in years. "Then I think the rules need to be changed," she said, turning back to Marcus. "For everyone's sake. You have to understand, at your age, the risk of a heart attack or stroke in a public pool. It's not just about you. It's about the liability to everyone else. The families here. The children." There it was. The thing that made Marcus's chest tighten. The implication that his death would be an inconvenience, that his life, his desperate attempt to move his body and stay alive, was a risk factor in someone else's calculation. He pulled himself out of the water in one smooth motion. It took effort. His right knee complained, but he'd been strong once, and the muscle memory was still there. He stood there dripping, water running down the lines of his face, and looked directly at Karen Hutchins. "I'm going to continue using the lap lanes," he said. His voice was quiet, but every person on the bleachers heard it. "According to the rules, and if that bothers you, I'm sorry. But I'm not leaving." "We'll see what the HOA board has to say about that," Karen said coldly. Then she turned and walked away, already pulling her phone from her designer bag, already making calls. Marcus got out of the pool. The other parents wouldn't meet his eyes. Sophie, the lesson instructor, gave him a small nod, sympathetic, helpless, but didn't approach him. He dried off slowly, feeling every one of his 72 years pressing down on him like the June heat. As he gathered his things, he heard one of the mothers say to her friend, "Can you imagine? That age, in a public pool? What if something happened?" Marcus walked to his car with his shoulders squared, but inside something had fractured. That night, he sat in his small house on Maple Street, the one he'd bought with Susan 42 years ago, now too big, too quiet, too full of ghosts, and waited for the inevitable. The HOA board email came at 9:47 p.m., a formal notice regarding concerns about liability and age-appropriate use of community facilities. A meeting was scheduled for next Tuesday. His presence was not requested. His defense would not be heard. He read the email 3 times. Each read made him angrier, but the anger was wrapped around something deeper, something that felt like erasure. Like proof that he'd become the thing he'd always feared, invisible except when someone needed something to complain about. Marcus made a decision then. Not a smart decision, not a calculated decision, but a decision nonetheless. He was going back to that pool. And he was going to make sure they never forgot what they saw. Part 2. The Evidence. The HOA board met on Tuesday at 7 p.m. in the community center's main hall, a room with beige carpet that had probably been installed in 1987 and never cleaned since. Marcus arrived at 6:55 p.m. and took a seat in the back, not acknowledging anyone, not making eye contact, just existing in the space like a ghost at his own funeral. Karen was already there, of course, holding court with 2 older men in khakis, who looked like they'd never questioned anything in their lives. She was pointing at printed screenshots of Facebook posts, parents complaining about safety concerns, questions about screening for elderly swimmers, suggestions that maybe the pool should have age-appropriate hours. Marcus had read those posts. He'd also read the responses. There had been supporters too, not many, but enough. A retired physical therapist who pointed out that low-impact exercise was medically essential for aging bodies. A couple with an elderly father who relied on the pool for mobility. Even a few younger adults who just thought the whole thing was absurd. But those voices were quiet. The HOA board president, a woman named Patricia, who actually seemed reasonable, gavelled the meeting to order. She looked uncomfortable. These were supposed to be routine Tuesday meetings, and instead, she was moderating what felt like a trial. "We have a concern raised by Karen Hutchins regarding liability and the use of community facilities by..." Patricia glanced at a note, clearly uncomfortable. "By members of advanced age who may pose a risk to other pool users." Marcus stood up from the back row. "I'd like to address the board," he said. The room went silent. Karen's head whipped around. Her face did that reddening thing again. "Of course," Patricia said, though she didn't look pleased. "Please come forward." Marcus walked to the front of the room. His knees felt stiff. He'd been thinking about this moment for 6 days, rehearsing it in his head, lying in bed at 3 a.m. running through different versions. But now that he was here, all of that rehearsal seemed pointless. Words were going to fail. "My name is Marcus Webb," he started. His voice was steadier than he felt. "I'm 72 years old. I've lived in this community for 42 years. My wife and I raised our children here. 2 of them are buried in Riverside Cemetery on Walnut Street. I'm a member of this pool in good standing, and I've been using the lap lanes 3 times a week for the last 3 months per the recommendation of my physician." He paused. Nobody interrupted him. Karen looked like she was about to burst. "There's nothing in the pool rules that restricts membership based on age. There's nothing in the bylaws that establishes an age limit for the use of any facilities. And there's nothing in the community standards that suggests that swimming as a form of medical therapy is somehow inappropriate or unsafe. But you have to understand," Karen started. "Let him finish," Patricia said, not unkindly. Marcus nodded. He pulled out a folder from his jacket pocket. Printed pages, organized and labeled. He'd spent the last 6 days preparing this. "I've had a cardiologist review my fitness to swim," he said, holding up the... Karen's face was now a color that couldn't be healthy. Her mouth opened and closed silently. "Mr. Webb," Patricia said, and she sounded different now, less uncomfortable, more thoughtful. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I think we've been operating under some assumptions that weren't warranted." "The liability concern is legitimate," one of the khaki men offered weakly. "Any member could what?" Marcus asked. "Could have a medical event. That could happen to anyone. You, me, Karen. A 20-year-old triathlete could have a heart attack at this pool tomorrow. Should we ban healthy young people too?" The logic was airtight. Everyone in the room knew it. "I move that we dismiss this concern and affirm that pool access is available to all members regardless of age, provided they comply with all safety regulations," Patricia said. "All in favor?" The vote was 4-1. Karen was the only dissent, and she looked like she'd swallowed glass. Marcus walked out of that meeting with a small piece of something restored. Not everything, but something. What he didn't know was that Karen Hutchins was already planning revenge. For 2 weeks after the board meeting, things were relatively normal. Marcus came to the pool at 8:15 a.m. He swam his laps. He didn't speak to anyone except occasional nods to Sophie, the lesson instructor, who'd been kind to him that first awful day. But he noticed things. Mothers who had previously ignored him now shot him looks. Not hostile exactly, but watchful. There were whispers that stopped when he got close. He overheard someone say, "That's the one who shut down Karen?" Like he was a villain in their story. The truth was, Karen had won. Even though she'd lost the board vote, she'd still accomplished what she set out to do, make his presence at the pool uncomfortable. Make him feel unwelcome. Make him question whether this sanctuary, this place his doctor had prescribed, was worth the social cost. And then came the Tuesday morning when everything escalated. Marcus was doing his 6th lap when he noticed Tom, the assistant director, standing poolside with his manager. Derek, both of them looking grim. Derek was holding a piece of paper, a letter, official-looking, from a lawyer's office. Marcus finished his lap and pulled himself out of the water. "Is everything okay?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "There's been a complaint filed," Derek said quietly. He looked deeply uncomfortable. "A formal complaint alleging that the pool is in violation of accessibility standards and creating a hostile environment for families because we're allowing—" He stopped, struggling with the words. "Members of advanced age to use the lap lanes without proper medical supervision." Marcus felt something inside him go cold. "That's not a real violation," he said. "No, it's not," Derek agreed. "But it's being taken seriously enough that we've had to contact our insurance company. And they're concerned. Apparently, Karen Hutchins is arguing that we're liable if anything happens to you while swimming, and that liability extends to the families here if something traumatic occurs in front of them." "So what does that mean?" Marcus asked, already knowing. "It means we're going to have to implement some new pool protocols," Derek said. "Nothing personal, but we'll need waiver forms, enhanced medical documentation, supervision requirements." "Discrimination," Marcus said quietly. "I know," Derek said, and he genuinely sounded sorry. I know that's what this is, but my hands are tied. The insurance company is pushing back, and Karen's lawyer is making noise about filing regulatory complaints. We can't afford that kind of scrutiny. Marcus didn't argue. He dried off, dressed, and left the pool. That night, he made another decision. He spent Wednesday researching. Not online, he wasn't skilled enough with computers for that, but at the public library, with help from an earnest young librarian named David, who seemed to understand what Marcus was looking for without being told directly. What you want, David said thoughtfully, is to understand the regulations around community pool liability, accessibility laws for seniors, and potentially anything related to HOA discrimination based on age. Exactly, Marcus said. For 6 hours, Marcus read. He learned about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how it applied to aging bodies and chronic conditions. He learned about age discrimination law. He learned that what Karen had set in motion wasn't just mean, it was potentially illegal. By Thursday morning, Marcus had a plan. It wasn't sophisticated, but it was solid. He contacted a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Janet Chen, a woman in her 60s who handled civil rights cases and who looked at Marcus across her desk with the first genuine sympathy he'd encountered in weeks. What you're describing, she said, is a textbook case of age discrimination and possible ADA violation. The pool is a public accommodation. You have a medical condition. Your doctor recommends this treatment. They cannot restrict your access based on age. Karen Hutchins didn't restrict me, Marcus pointed out. She just complained. Yes, but she used the complaint to create a pattern, Janet said. A complaint that led to new protocols that specifically burden older members. That's discrimination, and the HOA, by implementing those protocols, is enabling it. What can we do? Marcus asked. Janet smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was a determined one. We send a formal letter. We document the discrimination. We request that they rescind the new protocols and provide written affirmation that age is not a criteria for pool access. And we give them 30 days to do it before we file suit. Will they sue back? Marcus asked. He was terrified of litigation, of the kind of legal process that could drain him mentally and financially. They might threaten to, Janet said, but they won't. Once a civil rights attorney is involved, most organizations back down. The legal exposure is too high. They'll fold. 3 days later, the letter arrived at the HOA office. The letter changed everything. Patricia, the board president, called an emergency meeting. This time, representatives from the pool management company also attended, along with someone from their insurance firm who looked deeply uncomfortable. The letter was read aloud in formal tones. The legal language was brutal. Words like discrimination, violation of federal law, and litigation hung in the air like toxic gas. Karen attended this meeting too. She arrived late, confident, wearing another designer outfit. She didn't know about the letter yet. Marcus had kept that part private, a surprise. When Derek showed her the letter, her entire face seemed to malfunction. This is absurd, she sputtered. He's the one creating problems. He's the one— Karen, Patricia interrupted, and her voice was ice. I need to know what exactly you're basing these health concerns on. Are you a medical doctor? No, but are you a pool safety professional? I've served on the standards committee for 3 years. That doesn't answer the question, Patricia said. She was angry now, and it was the kind of anger that came from being put in a difficult position. What you've done is create a formal complaint pattern that's now being viewed as discrimination. Against Mr. Webb personally. I was looking out for the community. No, you were looking out for yourself, one of the younger board members said. A woman Marcus hadn't seen speak before, now visibly furious. You didn't like being told no, so you escalated. And now we're all in legal jeopardy because of it. The insurance representative was on his phone, calling his office. The pool management company representative looked like he might be having a medical emergency. Here's what's going to happen, Patricia said. We're going to rescind the new pool protocols effective immediately. The letter from Mr. Webb's attorney will be formally acknowledged and responded to with a statement affirming that the Riverside Community Pool does not discriminate based on age. And Karen, you're going to apologize. To Mr. Webb, personally, in front of the board. I will not, Karen said. She stood up. This is witch hunt. You're right, Patricia said. You won't. Which is why you're also being removed from the Standards Committee and all other HOA leadership positions, effective immediately. Furthermore, your actions have created significant legal liability for this community. We may be pursuing our own action against you to recover costs. Karen's face went white. She sputtered something unintelligible and then stormed out of the meeting, but Marcus wasn't there to see it. He'd watched the live stream that Janet had arranged, projected on a monitor in Janet's office, and when it was over, he felt hollow. He'd won. The pool was his again. The discrimination was over. Everything he'd fought for had been achieved. So why did it feel like he'd lost something in the process? That Friday, Derek called him. I want to apologize, Derek said. I should have fought harder against the protocols. I should have pushed back. Instead, I took the easy road, and that meant throwing you under the bus. It's not your fault, Marcus said. You had pressure from above. Still, Derek said. For what it's worth, we'd like to offer you a 3-month membership extension at no cost. And honestly, we'd like you to come back. The pool feels like it's missing something without you. Marcus said he'd think about it. He didn't go back the next week. Part 5. The Reckoning. 3 weeks passed. Marcus didn't return to the pool. He didn't return his doctor's calls, asking if his arthritis was getting worse. He didn't leave his house except for groceries and prescriptions. The victory had turned bitter in a way he didn't know how to process. Yes, he'd won. He'd proven that Karen was wrong. He'd demonstrated that he had legal standing and rights. He'd forced the community to acknowledge its discrimination, but he'd also become something he didn't want to be, a problem. A conflict. The old guy who sued the HOA, mothers who had previously at least made eye contact with him, now pretended he didn't exist. He'd seen one crossing the street to avoid passing him at the mailbox. The neighborhood had fracture lines now, and he was the epicenter. It was Sophie who changed things. She appeared at his door on a Wednesday afternoon with a determination that reminded him of someone trying to move a boulder uphill. Sophie was 24, working at the pool while she finished her nursing degree, and she had the kind of moral clarity that only came from not yet being beaten down by the world. You have to come back, she said without preamble. The pool is different without you. It's better without me, Marcus said. Everyone's more comfortable. That's the opposite of true, Sophie said. Do you know what the kids are calling what happened? They're calling it the Karen incident. They think you're a hero. And more than that? She paused. My grandfather has arthritis. Really bad? He's been too scared to swim because of what happened to you. Too scared that people would judge him for using the pool. My actual grandfather, he's healthy, he could benefit from this, and your situation just convinced him that he shouldn't try. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Your grandfather could use the pool, he said. Nothing's stopping him. Exactly, Sophie said. But he doesn't believe that. He believes what he saw, that the community decided you didn't belong. And if they decided that about you, why wouldn't they decide it about him? Marcus went back to the pool on the following Monday morning. He expected resistance. He expected coldness. He expected the triumph of a legal victory to feel hollow in the actual space. What he didn't expect was the silence. He arrived at 8:15 a.m. as always. He changed into his swim trunks. He walked out to the pool deck, and everyone was there. Not everyone in the neighborhood, just the people who cared. Sophie, Derek, Patricia. The board president, sitting in the bleachers like she was personally ensuring his welcome. A woman Marcus didn't recognize, probably Sophie's grandmother, sitting beside her. 3 other older people, ranging from maybe 65 to 80, standing by the lap lanes, and then, stepping forward, Karen Hutchins. Marcus's breath caught. For a moment, he thought it was round 2, that she'd come to say something cutting, something final, something to reclaim her dignity. But when she got close, he saw something he hadn't expected. Tears. I owe you an apology, Karen said. Her voice was small, different from before. And more than that, I owe you an explanation. She sat down at the edge of the pool, and Marcus found himself sitting beside her. Despite every instinct telling him to swim away, My father, Karen said, died of a heart attack when he was 68, at a public place, at a shopping mall, and I never got over it. I became so scared of things like that happening that I started seeing danger everywhere, especially around things I couldn't control. And when I saw you at the pool, she stopped, composing herself. I saw my father's death waiting to happen. And I thought if I just stopped it, if I just prevented it, that somehow I'd have more control, that somehow that would make me safe. Marcus didn't know what to say. I was wrong, Karen continued. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about the danger. I was wrong about all of it. And I caused real harm because I was scared. I want you to know that I'm actually ashamed of myself. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. Marcus could tell that much. She was simply stating facts about herself that she'd come to understand. I'm going back to therapy, Karen said. The lawyer you hired, Janet Chen, she actually recommended someone. And I've been going every week since the board meeting. Turns out I have some issues around control that needed addressing. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a person, not a villain. Saw fear masquerading as protection. Saw someone broken in ways that had nothing to do with him. Thank you for telling me that, Marcus said. I mean that. I wasn't sure I'd ever understand what that was about. It wasn't about you, Karen said. That's what I'm learning. My anger, my fear, my need to control. None of that was actually about you. You just happened to be the target. She stood up to leave. You don't have to go, Marcus said. Karen looked at him, really looked at him, and shook her head gently. I do, for today. But maybe I could swim at a different time? Is there a time when you're not here? I'm trying to get into better habits. The therapy, the anger. I'm trying. Morning lap time is usually 8:15 to 9, Marcus said. The afternoons are pretty open. Karen nodded. She turned to leave, then paused. And Mr. Webb? Thank you for not just letting me get away with that. For fighting back. I needed someone to do that. Then she was gone. Marcus changed into his swim trunks. He walked to the lap lane. Sophie was setting up for the children's lessons. Derek was straightening deck chairs. Patricia was watching from the bleachers with her eyes warm, and Marcus dove in. The water was perfect. It always had been.